Hello, and welcome to my review of Björk's 8th studio album, Vulnicura, which was released on January 20th, 2015. This album was actually leaked and rush released. It was supposed to come out 2 months later, and it came out digitally 2 months before the physical copy came out in March of 2015. This comes 4 years after the previous record, and it is completely different from Biophilia, which was her 7th studio album. This album is very personal. It's very singer-songwriter talking about their own personal life. And in this case, she is talking about her breakup with her 10-plus year life partner, Matthew Barney, American artist Matthew Barney, they have a daughter together. And this album is about their breakup. This album is, for Björk, very autobiographical, which is not something that we usually get so much from her, especially recently. And it's almost Taylor Swift-like in the way she narrates and decides to sort of, we all know who this album is about. There's no mystery to who she might be dissing or who she might be expressing pain from. It's also, I've reviewed her 4th studio album, Vespertine, which is my favorite record of hers already, so you can check that out on this channel. I'll put a link in the description for it. My favorite album, that album is all about the building of such a beautiful romance and all of the building blocks of a relationship, things coming together, fitting so beautifully and such bliss. And this album is everything falling apart. The title of this album is Vulnicura, which doesn't really mean anything in any language, but it does take Latin forms like vulna, meaning wound, and cure, meaning heal. So Vulnicura, healing of wounds. This album was made literally for her to cure and heal herself from the pain that she experienced. This is her darkest album, darkest in sound, darkest in lyrics. It is bleak, but yet it is hopeful. It is stark. It's not minimalistic in the way Biophilia was in terms of instrumentation. This album brings back strings, something we haven't heard since Homogenic. And I'm talking about real orchestral sounds. Lots of horns, lots of strong. Arca, who is the Venezuelan producer who worked on this record, along with the Haxon Cloak, produced quite an oral experience for this record. Very abrasive, very hard-hitting and edgy beats and production that carries this album into very edgy and kind of almost punk territory. I will say that this album feels very much split in half. The first 6 songs on this album are literally one by one describing the events leading up to, during, and after her breakup with Matthew Barney. And then the last few tracks are sort of just extras that were kind of dealing with maybe not so directly the relationship, but dealing with other things that were tied to the hardship she was facing at that time. The first song is called Stonemilker. This is the most epic, sweeping horns and orchestra song that we have had from her since, I don't know, I mean, it's been a long time since she's done something quite this sweeping, this is very homogenic, this is very Hunter, this is very yoga. This song feels like it belongs on that album. It has some of the most interesting melodic sort of range in the rest of the album. I find the rest of the album strays a little bit from trying to find a melody, something she was really striving for with Biophilia. And that is one shortcoming that I will say is for this album for me, is that it doesn't really try to find melody so much as it definitely tries to dive deeper into the songwriting and the lyrics, and also in sort of more the production and the beats. This album is a lot about how the producer sort of took and had free reign to basically create whatever he wanted. So for me, Stonemilker is one of the few songs where things are a little bit more minimal in production, and so Arca is a little step back. This is more just orchestra and her voice singing a more sort of love-lost, kind of mournful but sweeping, kind of hopeful ballad. The song kicks off the album, and it really sets the tone for something very raw and personal. Moments of clarity are so rare, I better document this. Across the view is fears. All that matters is who is open-chested, who has coagulated, who can share, and who has shut down the chances. She's saying, I'm going to take this pain I just experienced, and I'm going to unravel this for you. I'm going to dissect this. I'm going to analyze this from a perspective of someone like a psychiatrist. She basically, she talks about people and why they choose to do things and why a relationship might fall apart, especially one where there's a child involved. So she takes this and sort of breaks down the sort of family dynamic. All of these things are addressed, and in a very poignant but also very abstract way. The next song, Lion Song, has a little bit more of a urgency to it. Stonemilker was a little bit more mellow in terms of just trying to kind of wallow in this, and Lion Song is maybe thinking, like, asking these questions of what's going on. This relationship is starting to go south. I can tell he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe he'll come out of this. Maybe these small declarations of solitude don't mean anything. I love when she says, I smell declarations of solitude. That's a very interesting way for her to describe how she could sense that Matthew was starting to kind of want to be on his own. Sorry, the sun's kind of directly in my eyes here. That's just nothing I can do about that. There's just such sort of, but which one? The joy peak, humor peak, frustration peak, anything peak for clarity. What she means by peak, she's actually asking for something to happen. Everything is just so tame, and she almost wants to stir things up. She wants answers. She wants to know why her partner is so unresponsive. Why is he so distant? Anything, asking for anything to happen, for something joyous, or maybe something truly dark needs to occur. Maybe this needs to fall apart. She's asking these questions. The next song, History of Touches, it was actually the song that was literally supposed to be about, like, the actual breakup. It was supposed to be right before. This song is like literally them last night where they're together, and she's very explicit in saying that they basically had sex. And she's sort of talking about how she feels this decaying, and all of the times that they loved each other, what's happening to that? This doesn't feel the same anymore. It's almost like she's hearkening back to Vespertine when she sings about all the times that we loved each other. Every single thing is compressed, every archive is compressed into a second right now. And it puts this urgency really in the forefront. This has one of the most interesting production it's discordant and dissonant, but in a very kind of pleasing to the ear way. It's the shortest song on the record. A lot of the songs are over 5 minutes long, which is something maybe I'm not really crazy about in a lot of the songs. It has a very interesting sort of synthesizer clashing sound that feels very raw and emotional, and you wouldn't expect that from it. So you could tell the experimentation was there. But this is one of the tracks where I really have to praise the production, because it is exquisite and impeccable, and it was on the right track. I don't feel that with necessarily every other song on this record. But let's get to the highlight song, and my favorite song on this album, Black Lake. This is immediately after the event. And this is the bleakest and most depressing song she'll probably ever write, and you can tell that. She's feeling that when she sings it. The music video, which I actually saw at the MoMA when she had her mid-career retrospective in 2015, I saw it, surround sound with all the sounds around you, and there was multiple screens showing her in Iceland in this raw environment, which is very raw and pure and dark, but also, powerful. She's beating her chest, she's trying, she's begging for answers, she's reflecting on everything that she felt like went wrong. You wounded me, I am one wound, my pulsating body, suffering being. My heart is an enormous lake, black with potion. I am blind, drowning in the ocean. These stanzas are interspersed with these long, very reflective breaks in instrumentation that drive on and on and on, almost too long, but just long enough, that really seep into the moment of this song. This song is like broken up very beautifully, and there's one part where the beat starts to pound and she starts pounding her chest in the music video, so you really feel the urgency and the power behind this song. It's not all just really mellow and sort of low energy. And the exquisite, a song like that's built off of orchestral backings that becomes instrumental and then becomes beat driven, but then gets very mellow and has all these rooms of space of like to breathe, is really unique and not something you see in a traditional song. It's over 8 minutes long. I mean, it's a real opus. She's really just pouring all of her heart out. It has some of the most beautiful lyrics. I mean, all of it, it's sort of just so hopeful, yet it's such a melancholy sound and song. I mean, the lyrics and melody are so depressing to listen to. I mean, she's really in pain, and you can hear it in her voice. And it's a black lake. This isn't a pretty lake. This is the deepest, darkest place that you can fall into. But she's singing about it in such a sort of, I will come above this. I will be in this dark, deep black lake, but I will rise above this at the end. You know, in the end she says, I am a glowing, shining rocket returning home. As I enter the atmosphere, I burn off layer by layer. She's reflecting on how she's become so much stronger because of this experience. You know, she's taken all the muck and the mire of this black lake and fed herself with it, and now is going to be more strong and beautiful than ever. The imagery from this music video just fits the song so much. I really recommend watching it. The next song is also my second favorite song, and it is called Family, and I believe this song should have actually closed out the album. I don't really get why it's in the middle, because it feels so cathartic and kind of like the end of something and moving on to the next. But that's just what it is. I would have put it at the end of the album. It reminds me of All Is Full of Love. It starts out very tense and very kind of angsty, and there's like a violent string plucking in the background. It's very dark and brooding, and then it opens up halfway through, and she decides to sort of almost let all the forgiveness in. The lyrics suddenly turn so hopeful, and she says that there is a swarm of sound around me. I am feeling the healing from this all of a sudden. You know, before she's just talking about like all these reasons she has to resent Matthew, resent her partner for doing this to her, for leaving her with a child, for throwing all this love away, and how painful this is. But she realizes that all of this is just going to make her stronger, that this is life, and I'm part and connected to something more powerful. And I'm documenting this for my music to create something truly beautiful. And the oral effect that is employed is the one moment in the album that it gets really big and broad. It's the one moment where it's not urgent, it's not, you know, direlessly asking a question. It feels like it's actually answering. It feels like she's not even singing. It's like she's beyond herself, like she's having an out-of-body experience. And so the breakdown and second half of Family is definitely the most gorgeous part of this album for me. The way the sounds kind of swoop and hover down and get like softly quieter and quieter as the song finishes out feels so warming and so calming after going through something so tumultuous. I really can't say that the rest of the album, unfortunately, lives up to the first 5 songs on this record, because unfortunately, I really feel as though it doesn't. The final song in the narrative of her breakup is Not Get, which is sort of just like this very brazen, one of the most hard-edged songs where she just says, I'm going to take this not get, basically hearkening to this breakup, and I'm going to become, I mean, it's again going back to this idea of like, I'm going to become stronger because of this. I'm still frustrated. I don't understand why this happened, but I'm going to, and it breaks down this sort of simmering sort of sparseness of the album, and it gets more to just like, let's just be like as hard and edgy as we can. Let's really sink our teeth into this darkness. And so for me, I don't really understand necessarily the placement in the album for this. Again, Family really should have been at the end, but I'm not going to criticize, because I know for Björk it meant a lot to put that song where it did. But because that song feels so much more like the healing part, it just feels like after going through the next few songs, we're dealing with such pain. But then we come to the song Atom Dance. Now this is an interesting song. It does become a little bit more hopeful. This song is kind of straying away from the 6-song narrative that she had for the first part of the album, and is a little bit more hopeful in tune compared to Not Get. And I do enjoy it. It's another really long song. It's the second, actually it is the longest song on the album after Black Lake, and it's over 8 minutes. Black Lake is over 10 minutes long. And this song features Anthony Hegarty, who actually did vocals on her album Volta. So it's really cool that she collaborated with him again after almost 10 years, because his voice with hers is a very sort of unique pairing that really sounds good together. And I like that she brought in a male voice, because she's already singing about breakups and all the stuff that's going on with her love life, and now she's sort of giving hope to that there's still room for another man in her life, or there's still room for love, there's still room for healing. This song speaks a lot about the universal consciousness of things coming together and healing. I am fine-tuning my soul to the universal wavelength. No one is a lover alone. I propose an atom dance. Our hearts are coral reefs in low tide. Love is the ocean we crave, restlessly turning around and around. I am dancing towards transformation. Learning by love to open it all, let this ugly wound relief, we fear unconditional heart space, healed by Atom Dance. So she's basically describing what love is and how love can heal all wounds. The chemical, you know, feeling of love, the atoms dancing. She literally describes it metaphorically like that. And she describes us as, particles in the universe, which is not a new territory for her. This song would fit a lot better on, harkens a lot more to Biophilia and Volta, where she was getting more kind of philosophical but also scientific in her allusions to love and human nature. And so this song uses those, whereas the rest of the album doesn't do that. The rest of the album is more just like emotions being written down, like again, as if Taylor Swift was writing about a breakup, except Björk does it a little bit more abstract, which, I applaud because her poetry and lyricism is a little bit more on another level. But anyway, I'm not going to say this isn't pop music, so there's that. But the lyrics are a little bit more in depth. But this song definitely goes back to sort of a playful but very earnest sort of comparing love to like atoms dancing. It's a scientific illusion, and I love when she gets like that because it proves that not only is she a total nerd, which I love, but she's also craving that, that cosmic sort of spiritual energy that she always sings about and hints at in her songs and her lyrics. So it's good to have this song after Not Get. But then we get dark again, unfortunately. We have this song called Mouth Mantra. This song is really interesting. This song was actually written about when she had throat surgery on her vocal cords, not long after Biophilia came out, where she actually wasn't sure if she was ever going to be able to sing again. Artists like Adele and several others have also undergone similar treatments and had problems with their voice. And you can imagine, Björk has a really croaking, wild, raspy voice. You would worry that maybe there could be some damage done, but this isn't necessarily because of that. It's just artists who have been singing for so long, 50 years, they can have damage to their vocal cords. Luckily, she had the surgery and she was able to sing just fine, though she did have to do a lot of time away from singing. And so this song is expressing insecurities about that moment in her head, and she's talking about like this tunnel. She refers to her throat not by throat, but as tube or pipe or tunnel. She always does that with her lyrics. She always uses, symbolism and metaphor. She never directly explains something, like as what it is. I love that about her lyrics. And she talks about how she's sung so much before, and she feels like all the pain, especially from the recent experience that she went through, was stifled, and now she wants to release it again. And so she's reflecting on how her mouth has been like her savior, but how when it felt closed, she really felt like she couldn't let it like be herself, or she felt all choked up. And I can only imagine just how difficult that experience would have been. So this was like an ode to her throat, and to how she would never take it for granted again, just how beautiful it is that she can sing and use her voice and music to heal herself from this experience. Because I have a feeling that this album definitely healed a lot of the wounds that she was facing going through this breakup in 2013 and 2014. The final song, Quicksand, it does sort of summarize the album. I wouldn't have put it at the end, but it does sort of, it's a shorter track, and she sort of just condenses everything down into saying, I am going through a process of healing. The lyrics define her abyss, show it respect. So show your darkness respect. Then a celestial nest will grow above. So then light will come through. If you let yourself truly heal from this pain. When I am broken, I am whole, and when I'm whole, I'm broken. Our mother's philosophy, it feels like quicksand, and if she sinks, I'm going down with it. So she's basically finding herself rooted in her ancestry. She's rooting herself as a woman, as a mother to her child. She's saying, I need to be strong for my daughter. I need to be strong to allow love to come back into my life. And so this sort of motherly sort of connection, which reminds me of her song Hollow, where she talks about like trunks of DNA and being connected to her mother and her mother's mother and her mother's mother before that. There's this sort of divine feminine theme playing out here. And that does make sense that she would close the album with this message of sort of feminine Unitarianism, this sort of like feeling comforted by knowing that, she was a strong mother through all of this, and she looks to her mother for guidance. And if she were ever to stray from that, she would feel as though her own being collapsed, just like she felt like she was going to at this break in the relationship. And so she's taking herself and picking herself up by her bootstraps in this song and saying, get out of this strong and head first. And so that's what this album does. You know, she could have made it a lot more like Black Lake and made the songs super melodramatic and super slow and super, I don't want to say painful because they're so painfully beautiful, but that's what they are. And I mean, for me, yes, personally, would I have maybe vibed with an album like that more? Possibly. For me, Bjork is always a little hit or miss sometimes, especially with her more recent music. She's very abstract, and sometimes that's a little hard to swallow. So these songs don't necessarily have huge replay value for me. In fact, I haven't listened to this album whole much since it actually came out. I definitely, when it first did come out, I did. But then since then, I've sort of let it just sort of digest, and I have grown to sort of listen to more songs later on. But the latter half of this record is harder to listen to for me, unfortunately. I really appreciate the songwriting, as I always do with Bjork, but maybe because I just have such an ear for melody, and also the songs sometimes just do feel like they go on a little bit too long, that I get a little tired from it, or I feel a little too exhausted. This album definitely has that. So I'm not saying that as like a bad thing, I'm just saying as a personal preference. A lot of people will really like that. And I know a lot of that is her production with Arca, and I think he's a masterful producer and beat maker, if you want to call him that. But, or like DJ, I guess. But I don't know, you know, if which with her going forward with her new album, which she describes as paradise compared to this being sort of like hell, which I can definitely see, if maybe he was going to use his strengths in a bit of a more Vespertine style. That's kind of my hope. I kind of see Vulnicura kind of starting to become a little bit like the long lost brother to Homogenic in terms of theme, and that Vespertine will come, even though this album is the end of what Vespertine was. Homogenic was in a way a breakup album too, and I'm going to review that album. And so, and declaring solitude and declaring independence. And Vespertine was about coming together. So her next album will probably show that, or at least the search for that. And I'm really interested to see where she goes from that. But yes, Bjork's been in a dark place, but all artists have to document this, and she did it in such a beautiful way. It is not my favorite album of hers, but the pain and rawness, I mean, you can't help but just love the authenticity of it and the realness and how powerful this was for her. You can't help but feel like you just went through something yourself listening to this record. So for that, I give it so much, and especially Black Lake and the music video. So stellar. Also Stonemilker and Family. Very, very important tracks for her discography. Very, very healing songs. And I hope that she truly is coming out the other side stronger. And I mean, also, I will just say this. You know, in the Taylor Swift trope and narrative of dissing exes, I do get the feeling that she does feel forgiveness. You know, she's not going to hate Matthew Barney for the rest of her life, or she's not going to ask her fans to bash Matthew Barney. You know, we're not supposed to feel hatred towards him. We're supposed to understand that this is how relationships work. They don't always work out. And it's not necessarily always just one side's fault. It could be both. And they both want to take responsibility and forgive and let go. And so I do get that sense from this album. This album isn't all that bitter, especially towards the end. And I like that and appreciate it about it. So for those reasons, that is my review of Vulnicura. Let me know what you thought about this record. If you liked more of the hard, edgy beat stuff that was a little discordant, because I know some Bjork fans really like that. Or if you liked sort of the more melodic, sweeping kind of concert hall orchestral vibes that she had sort of more early on in the album, because it's very polarized in sound. So let me know what you think, and I will look forward to reviewing more of her stuff and to her new album, which is supposed to come out possibly by the end of this year. Fingers crossed. So thanks for watching, and I'll link my Vespertine review in my description box. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful one. Bye.